Look at
Nice
that, we're
background.
matching.
See, I knew I'd do something right before we kick this off, Johnny.
Yeah, why not?
Man, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How about you?
I'm great, man. Thank you so much for this interview. As I know we're on limited time, I'm just going to throw questions at you like ninja stars. Is that
Go
sweet?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'll try to throw them back at you as fast.
Before we crack on with Warhorse One, first question that I've been wanting to ask you for so many years. Are we going to get a Sinners and Saints too?
Not with me in it. No.
Ah, God, that's one of my favorite action movies.
Mm. It's for being the action movie it is, it was really a breakout film for the director William, and kind of really started his career. And that's as close as you can get, I think, on it making an action film and having it be really, really, really well made.
I was brilliant. Well, if we're not going to get a sequel with you in it, then it's not worth watching. No way.
No,
Uh,
William makes good movies. He's a working director and does in the action movie genre, he is like one of the best out there. So
I
if he
agree.
did one with other people in it or a revisitation of a remake or whatever, I'm sure he'd do an excellent job.
Well, on to your latest release, Warhorse One. I was so lucky to get to watch that recently. I loved it. I won't go into the full details of my review, but I did knock on a hefty 5 stars for you, big man. It
Oh,
was
thank you
great.
so much. Thank you.
Um, but what inspired you to tell the story of Warhorse One and explain the themes of like the civilian rescue and have it set after the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Yeah, well, I had wrote that 2 years prior to it even happening, so no one knew that was happening. And but I could kind of, if you're a history buff at all and you pay attention what happens in our sort of military conflicts of the United States, if you looked at Vietnam, you were like, oh, yeah, this is going to fall apart and everything's going to be a tough deal. Um, that's kind of like the base of where that story started. And but the impetus really is twofold here. Um, I woke up one day and decided it was time for me to make my own movie. I had entertained other people's ideas and scripts that have been pitched to me and stuff like that over the years, and been a participant, in their films. But this was the opportunity for me to kind of like go, you know what? I have an idea. I want to do my own thing and make that happen. And the second part of it was an experience I had as a man with my daughter. When kids are born, they're these little kind of potatoes, that just kind of wiggle around, and you instinctively have a primitive desire to protect it and love it, and you understand that it's your offspring. But around 2.5 years old, something changed where I was making her breakfast in my kitchen, and she was sitting on the kitchen counter, and breakfast was cooking, and I looked over at her, and our eyes locked, and we made like the first conscious connection. And it was the most magical, life-changing moment I've ever had. And I was like, how do I share that with the world? How do I encapsulate that and give that to the world? Because it's such a beautiful moment where a man, who he is before that moment and who he becomes, where I would gladly suffer every pain that this life had to offer to protect her and take care of her. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. So, and it worked out, that became the sort of heart of the story.
And see, that's one of the things that I think made the story strong as well. You and you protecting the girl, and then just the dynamic and the relationship you've built up over time. You know, you could just feel it, felt it was real, and you could see your mission was to save her, but then you could see she had every bit of faith in you that you were going to do that.
Yeah.
And without
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
anything away, the finale speaks for itself in that
Yes.
department.
Yeah. Well, it's a metaphor for, those of us who step into that role of you got to make it to the top of the mountain and protect your baby at all costs, and it's really an interesting metaphor for my own life and for this film itself, like trying to protect this thing every step of the way to make it what it is it was an extreme challenge.
And then how did you approach the task of like creating and portraying the terrains and get into the feel of being a lone surviving operator?
How did I what?
Get into like the feel and the mindset of being a lone surviving operator?
How did I get into that? Well, there are a lot of really tragic um stories that have happened in the last 20 years of the war on terror, um, that you hear these stories, like Robert's Ridge, um, or even Marcus's Lone Survivor or anything like that. And Neil Roberts is another guy that was a tragic story about a guy who fell out of a helicopter and survived for a little bit of time until he's come to the wounds by fighting insurgents. Um, th- these are harrowing, tragic stories, and one of the things that, the message of the film, like there's a dual message about children being, the ones who really carry the burden of war, and but also the men and women that we use in these conflicts, and how kind of when we're done with them, they're kind of abandoned to just go back into civilian life and the things that they have to deal with. Um, so I wanted to kind of touch on those things, but I think I think all of us have a fight or flight response to terrible situations. And for me personally, in my life, I'm a fighter. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 25 years and martial arts almost my whole life. And so I'm that type of guy that's gonna face the fire head on. And so it was kind of easy to get into that role. But I also, not to talk too much, but I wanted to show in the beginning there the character Mirko, a guy who's been trained to deal with this kind of stuff, and the best of the best, a development group operator, but show him now alone and trying to mentally deal with that situation, because I don't know if we've really seen that side of the spectrum,
Yeah.
um and I just hope that I was able to accomplish that.
Yeah, you made your character like from the get-go, your character was very likable. Yeah, and you could see the character development. Like when you first meet him, he's pure get in, get the job done, and he's very focused. But then the longer he's with this girl, sort of the more human he becomes less of like a military man, and he sort of takes on a surrogate father figure, as you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, that's really the journey, my friend. I can tell you from my personal experience in life is what you care about changes. When you have that connection moment, like Lisa I did with my daughter, um, everything else is secondary. Everything. Um, and I wanted to show that this guy, like, it's not just about this mission he's on. It's about the connection he has with this little girl, and he would risk everything to protect her. I think that's a special thing. And there are, you know I don't know, in this woke culture we have in our society here, with film and television and all this stuff, um it's refreshing to me to be able to make a movie about the fact that there are still individuals out there that possess the courage and the bravery to risk everything to protect innocent life, you know?
Yeah. The gunfights as well. I've always loved the gunfights in your movies. There's
Cool.
something authentic about them. And the same goes for this one here. Was there any sort of like tactical team that sort of came in and advised, or is that just your? No, is that just you?
Yeah, man. Oh yeah. Well, I've been when I was a 5-year-old boy on my 5th birthday, I got a rifle from a present. My father was training with firearms and competing with firearms, and I grew up in that kind of like, this is a responsibility that you're supposed to take on. And so I've been training since I was a kid. Um, I was just saying to somebody that, when I got notified I'd be going to North Africa to shoot Black Hawk Down, I actually had just come back from the Angeles shooting range where I was shooting my bolt action sniper rifle. So for me, it's like everything you see me do with firearms in a movie is like, you can credit that to my father and to me putting the time and effort in my daily life to train with firearms and to become proficient in that. Um, outside of movies and being creative, just as a man, like to be able to have that responsibility and that skill set. So to me, it's like everything you see, and I left a lot of these great moments where the weapon would malfunction or go down, and to show the proficiency of the operator to get that weapon back up in the fight, um, is a real thing that these guys experience, and you don't get to see that a lot in movies in Hollywood, because actors train for a couple weeks, and then if the thing malfunctions, they say cut and they restart. For me, I'm like, let's work through it, let's show it. You know what I mean? So I think that's what kind of makes it unique and special.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments you got malfunctions throughout the movie, and I was like, ah, that's cool. You never really see that. But
Yeah, like one of the
fine.
first times that it happened was this cool kind of like double feed situation where he drops a mag and he racks it and gets it back up. um and it's really smooth and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny, like when I watch the films, um sequences of me working through that, it's a visceral experience for me, because I'm reliving that moment of getting that weapon back up and stuff. So it's kind of a interesting thing.
And finally, Johnny, what do you hope viewers will remember most about this movie, and what message do you want them to take away from it?
um well, the one of the things that I put in the film that originally wasn't in there is the something called the denouement, which is a term about how you wrap up the story at the end of a film. So after, I don't want to give any spoilers, but that that wrap up at the end of the film is really kind of the message of the film, and something that when I was writing it, I was very specific about the wording I used. And the takeaway from this is to remind people, the on a message side of the film, that the children are the one that suffer the burden of war, and it's a brutal aspect of our humanity. Where I was asked recently, "Are you a fan of the military?" and I couldn't help but say no. I'm not a fan, and that's a terrible choice of words, because war is one of like the top 3 worst conditions of our humanity: war, famine, and disease. I mean, you can't get any worse than that. And I want to remind people that children are the one that suffer from that the greatest, and then the people that we use in those wars, um, are the people that really kind of carry that burden through the rest of their lives. And but the actual message of the film is to remind people that the things in life that are worth living for are worth dying for.
I agree, Johnny. Man, it's been awesome talking to you. This has been, it's a bucket list moment talking to you, man. Wish I had longer.
Hey, one of these days we'll do it again.
Yeah, certainly. Congratulations with the release of Warhorse One. And for anyone who's watching, listening, it's a brilliant war movie that Johnny wrote and directed and starred in, done the score to, and it's fantastic. 5 stars all the way.
Ah,
Check it
thank you,
out.
thank you, thank you. I appreciate that, man.
Thank you so much for your time, Johnny.
Absolutely. We'll do it again.